leaving the hospital. The mayor and his family appreciate the outpouring of love and support sent his way. Mayor Giuliani, the man who took down the mafia, saved New York City, and ran toward the towers on September 11th, is the same fighter he's always been, and he's winning this fight. Please, keep the prayers coming. We feel them, and the mayor feels them. We'll continue to update you as we can.
In order to form a more perfect union. House divided. I'm sure they can be hopefully principled.
To each other, our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor.
When I was a kid, people often spoke of the American dream. It was usually described in terms of the hope that honest middle-class families could own a home, care for their loved ones, and leave their children better off than themselves. Many of my friends' parents had lived through the Great Depression, and some fought in World War II. They knew privation, grief, and sacrifice. It shouldn't surprise us that their understanding of the American dream was largely rooted in a sense of material security. And yet, I would suggest that this desire for economic security was undergirded by something more profound: the aspiration for spiritual freedom, the freedom to live in accord with one's conscience and to follow the teaching of one's religious beliefs. This reverence for Americans' religious convictions formed the bedrock of our country from the beginning. Some might say this notion of spiritual freedom belongs to the private sphere. It is a matter of personal practice and not of public affairs. Some might even argue that to debase matters of religion to those of politics is to muddy the waters of public discourse with pious sentiments. One of the most prominent voices of the American Revolution, Thomas Jefferson, a deist and one of the founders most influenced by the Enlightenment thinkers, Jefferson nevertheless wrote just 5 years after drafting the Declaration, "Can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we remove their only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are the gift of God?" And to that question, Jefferson and his fellow founders would have said no. Rights, as understood by the drafters of the Declaration and the Constitution, are not conjured into existence by political consensus, nor are they granted by parliaments or princes. Our rights exist not on parchment alone, but on the immutable foundation of the laws of nature and nature's God. That is to say that even if the drafters of the Constitution disregarded a fundamental right to life, the American people, just like every people across history, can claim a share of that right, or that gift, as Jefferson recognized, because of the basic fact that life comes not from the government, but from God. This is the animating principle behind what the founders called natural rights. Rights inherent to the human person, not because of race or wealth or nationality, but because of the dignity bestowed by the Creator. As Alexander Hamilton put it 1 year before the signing of the Declaration of Independence, "The sacred rights of mankind are not to be rummaged for among old parchments or musty records. They are written as with a sunbeam in the whole volume of human nature by the hand of divinity itself, and can never be erased or obscured by mortal power." In our day, I fear that we are at risk of losing this metaphysical grounding of a person's rights. There seems to be no limit to the number or kinds of rights individuals can claim. Rights have become assertions of will, often severed from truth or justice. Sadly, deeply immoral acts are often defended under the banner of individual rights. But I would posit to you that this conception of rights is really a misconception. Rights do not exist just because we say they do. And here I call to mind one of my intellectual heroes, St. Thomas Aquinas. Aquinas rarely spoke of rights in the plural, Instead, he referred to the Latin word jus, which means the right, understood not as a claim, but as that which is due to another. In Thomistic terms, a right is what justice demands, as measured by the divine order. By this he meant something in accord with God's design for mankind and the universe. This is a far more substantive and sobering understanding of rights. It places rights not in the realm of popular preference or ever-evolving societal demands, but in the realm of respect for the human person and the common good. At the same time, the natural law tradition insists that these principles of freedom, justice, rights, and responsibilities are not hidden from us. On the contrary, these fundamental truths are accessible to all, discoverable by natural reason, written, as St. Paul says, in their hearts. This is precisely the claim made in the opening of the Declaration of Independence, that the American cause is justified not by majority will nor sectarian creed, but by the self-evident truth that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Importantly, the Declaration's appeal to the British is not a democratic one. The colonists did not declare political independence from their ancestral homeland simply because the majority agreed. No, the appeal of the Declaration was fundamentally moral and philosophical. It was a practical application of moral reason to political grievance. In the estimation of the signers of the Declaration, British governance had devolved from stewardship into tyranny. In fact, they all agreed in the Declaration that the Crown involved itself in circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. This claim is not for mere rhetorical flourish, rather, it signals a moral judgment. The abuses of the Crown were more than an inconvenience. They were a grave injustice. The signers of the Declaration committed a revolutionary act, one that led to a devastating war. Yet they acted to restore the moral law that had been lost, the rights that we are given by God. And while it's impossible for us to know the thoughts within the hearts and minds of men, I believe it was the conscience, the inner witness of the divine law that stirred many of the founders to affix their names to the Declaration. Conscience is the key to understanding how the founders accessed the truths of the eternal law and applied them to their circumstances. The Second Vatican Council in Gaudium et Spes describes conscience as the most secret core and sanctuary of a man. There he's alone with God, whose voice echoes in its depths. The founders' defense of the colonists was not only an act of courage, but one of justice. Prior to America's founding, many nations only recognized the rights of a privileged few. But the Declaration laid the foundation for recognizing the rights of all Americans. Now, this promise of liberty was not fulfilled instantaneously. It took a bloody civil war and many courageous abolitionists to end the sin of slavery and respect the dignity of all persons. But from the very beginning, our founders understood that rights do not exist within a vacuum. With every right comes responsibilities to our families, our fellow citizens, and our Creator. In other words, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness does not render the political order neutral on questions of good and evil. It does not leave us in a naked public square, to use Father Richard John Newhouse's famous phrase. Rather, it presumes that citizens are moral actors, capable of discerning the good and obligated to pursue it. The Founding Fathers anticipated that the American people would not passively receive dictates from the state as distant subjects, but that they would actively participate in moral and political deliberations as citizens. This is why George Washington famously said in his farewell address, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, Religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism, who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the duties of men and citizens. Today, nearly 250 years after the birth of our republic, we find ourselves the recipients of this great moral inheritance. For if our rights are real, then so too are our responsibilities. To be an American citizen is to be entrusted with the freedom to pursue the good, the duty to care for our neighbors and uphold justice, and the burden and the privilege of conscience. May we prove worthy of it.
Mayor Rudy Giuliani is out of the ICU. He'll spend some time recovering before leaving the hospital. The mayor and his family appreciate the outpouring of love and support sent his way. Mayor Giuliani, the man who took down the mafia, saved New York City, and ran toward the towers on September 11th, is the same fighter he's always been, and he's winning this fight. Please, keep the prayers coming. We feel them, and the mayor feels them. We'll continue to update you as we can.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union. Sure, they can get most of these principles.
Pledge to each other our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor.
When we think of the American Revolution, we often think of the famous battlefields of Valley Forge and Saratoga, of muskets and Minutemen, of the Boston Tea Party, and Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. But there was another war, albeit one kept under wraps and waged in the shadows. But a war that was no less dangerous than the kind fought on horseback, as cannonballs whistled overhead. By November 1776, mere months after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the Continental Army had endured heavy losses and a punishing string of setbacks in New York and New Jersey. In Long Island, roughly 1,300 Americans were killed, wounded, or captured. At Fort Washington, General Washington was forced to surrender roughly 3,000 men. In the 5 major battles between August and November of 1776, the Continental Army was reduced to fewer than 5,000 men inside a candlelit tent along the New York Harbor. Following the catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Long Island, General Washington confronted a grim reality. Surrounded, outnumbered, and outmaneuvered, he asked his officers for the unthinkable. Do we have any other options? Silence followed. They all knew the truth. Only a miracle could save them. In the months that followed, the mightiest military power in the world drove the beleaguered American forces from the New York region, pushing them through New Jersey and nearly to the brink of collapse. Supplies were scarce, spirits were low, and time was running out. In the winter of 1776, Washington's crossing at Trenton and Princeton were astonishing victories, but these achievements alone could not reverse the tide of the war. The British Army had captured New York, a critical stronghold for trade and transportation, and turned Manhattan into a fortress. New York, without exaggeration, is the pivot on which the entire Revolution War turns, said John Adams himself. And without the city, and without intelligence from inside its gates, Washington knew the American cause would not survive. He needed eyes, he needed ears, he needed spies. From this necessity was born one of the most audacious and consequential acts of espionage in our nation's history. The Culper spy ring, headquartered in British-occupied New York City, this 6-person intelligence network changed the course of the Revolutionary War and the fate of our new nation. Washington turned to a young officer named Benjamin Talmadge, codenamed John Bolton. Talmadge replaced General Charles Scott, whose approach to espionage had been blunt and rather unimaginative. Scott would dispatch lone scouts on one-way missions across enemy lines, hoping they'd return with scraps of intelligence. It was a gamble, and one that too often failed. The execution of Lieutenant Nathan Hale, who was caught, tried, and sentenced to death within the span of 12 hours, was a grim case in point. Talmadge suggested a new approach to Washington. Instead of risking the lives of uniformed officers by sending them behind enemy lines, why not gather intelligence through unsuspecting allies who already lived in British-occupied territory, creating a network of spies living among the British? Washington agreed with the Talmadge strategy and appointed him Chief of Intelligence. Talmadge was only 24, but he knew both the people and the landscape on Long Island well, which would prove to be invaluable. Major Talmadge immediately began creating a tight-knit ring of embedded operatives working silently beneath the surface in the British-occupied Long Island. What became known as the Culper spy ring was the most successful spy network on either side of the war. Talmadge's recruits were not particularly well trained. Indeed, these informants consisted primarily of old friends he had made while growing up in Setauket, Long Island. They were farmers, merchants, and laborers. Their intelligence network operated successfully in and around New York City for 5 years. No spy's true identity was revealed, not to General Washington, not even amongst one another. There was Abraham Woodhull, a young New York farmer, who ferried messages under the name Samuel Culper Sr. His counterpart, Samuel Culper Jr., was Robert Townsend, who wrote for a Loyalist newspaper while secretly reporting to Washington. Austin Rowe, a tavern keeper, carried messages hidden in saddlebags. Caleb Brewster, a defiant seaman, rowed across the Long Island Sound to deliver intelligence to the commander-in-chief himself. Among the company of double agents, there was also a woman, her identity still unknown, codenamed Agent 355, a lady shrouded in mystery. She seduced secrets from the lips of British soldiers. According to speculations, it was Agent 355 who relayed the critical information that ultimately exposed the treasonous actions of Benedict Arnold. Lastly, there was James Rivington. When the early sparks of the Revolution ignited into open war in 1775, Rivington found himself squarely in the crosshairs. His New York print shop, once a hub of Loyalist literature, was ransacked, torched by the Sons of Liberty. Fearing for his safety, Rivington fled to England. But exile didn't last. By 1777, he was back in New York, quietly reopening his business. This time just steps from the dry goods store of a discreet patriot named Robert Townsend. Something had changed after Rivington's return, whether it was a genuine conversion, a practical play for profit, or frustration with the Crown censorship. Especially its muzzling of Rivington's attempt to criticize General Howe remains uncertain. What is clear, however, is that sometime in late 1778, the once loyal English-born printer began to operate under the noses of British officers, feeding sensitive communications to the Culper spy ring. Now, to the world, Rivington was a first-rate loyalist, owner of one of New York's most prominent coffee houses, editor of the Royal Gazette, and personal printer to the King's most excellent majesty. The Gazette famously published biting satire against the American cause. His coffee house, nestled in the heart of British-occupied New York, became a veritable nest of loose-lipped British officers. Rivington's outward loyalty to the British made him the perfect spy. No one suspected the outspoken Tory to slip coded messages inside book bindings and pass them along to Robert Townsend. To protect the ring of spies, he commanded, Major Talmadge crafted a system of extraordinary precision, and given that names were too traceable, assigned each of his spies a code number in their encrypted communications. In total, 763 numerical identities were created, each cite for protecting a patriot. Rivington was 726 in the Culper Code Book. Only once secrecy was no longer needed did it become public knowledge that this apparent traitor to America had in fact been one of its fiercest defenders. Information flowed from New York City northward to General Washington's camp in New Windsor, threading its way through miles of British-controlled territory. The operation began with Austin Roe, who would make the long ride from Long Island into Manhattan under the guise of routine business. There, in the quiet of Townsend's shop, Roe would place an innocuous order, one encoded with Washington's prearranged phrases, which Townsend had received via courier from headquarters. The request, signed by Talmadge under his alias John Bolton, triggered the next phase. Roe concealed the dispatches by folding them among the merchandise. Anna Strong, a local, would hang a black petticoat on her clothesline, visible for the Long Island Sound to alert Caleb Brewster, the Continental Army's boatman. The series of handkerchiefs indicated the precise cove where Brewster could land under cover of night. Brewster would then ferry the intelligence across the Sound and into the hands of Talmadge. The process spanned 2 weeks, from beginning to end. Through painstaking observation, the Culper spies uncovered a devastating British scheme of economic sabotage. Thousands of forged Continental dollars were being printed in New York and smuggled across enemy lines. The British were deliberately devaluing American currency, aiming to wreck the fragile economy of the nascent republic. Washington responded swiftly, shutting down the counterfeit circulation routes and launching efforts to stabilize the currency. It was an invisible victory, but without it, the revolution may well have buckled under the weight of economic ruin. But that was only the start of the Culper spies' successful espionage. In 1778, the Culper spy ring obtained the British Naval Code Book and delivered it to French Admiral d'Estaing. With the vital intelligence, the French were able to anticipate British naval movements in American waters, enabling d'Estaing's fleet to evade traps, strike more effectively, and secure critical victories at sea, culminating in naval dominance that helped corner British forces at Yorktown. General Clinton and Admiral Graves were assembling a force of 9 warships and nearly 10,000 troops with plans to strike Rochambeau's soldiers in a surprise assault. Acting swiftly, Major Talmadge relayed the intelligence through trusted channels to deliver the intelligence directly to the French officers in Newport. Simultaneously, Hamilton rushed word to Lafayette and Washington, and they devised a successful scheme to divert the British forces back towards New York. What could have been a crushing British blow was thwarted through daring espionage. Most famously, the spies uncovered the treachery of Benedict Arnold, exposing his plan to surrender West Point to the British. Had Arnold's mission succeeded, West Point would have fallen into British hands. The Hudson River would have been severed, the colonies divided, and the revolution itself smothered in its cradle. It's no exaggeration to say that the course of the American Revolution, indeed the very existence of the United States, turned on messages no one could see, sent by men whose names history almost forgot. The British intelligence officer, Major George Beckwith, put it this way: Washington did not really outfight the British, he simply outspied us. It may be more accurate to say Washington outfought the British because he outspied them. The heroes of the Culper spy ring operated undercover, without recognition, without reward, and at immense personal risk. When the war ended, they sought no fanfare for their covert acts of courage. Indeed, several of their identities were not confirmed for nearly 2 centuries. It is tempting to read history as the dramatic tale of generals and statesmen presiding over events of grand significance, as the forces of destiny itself seemed to bend according to their will. Victory in the American Revolution was achieved not only on the battlefield, but in back rooms and back alleys, from code letters and clever disguises. The heroes of the Culper Ring did not seek glory, they sought freedom. Their courage reminds us that the fate of a nation can hinge on the quiet work of brave men and brave women who may forever remain unseen, unheralded, and unnamed. Today, we remember and honor their quiet courage and their willingness to risk their lives for this new nation. Their stories and names will not be forgotten.
Mayor Rudy Giuliani is out of the ICU. He'll spend some time recovering before leaving the hospital. The mayor and his family appreciate the outpouring of love and support sent his way. Mayor Giuliani, the man who took down the mafia, saved New York City, and ran toward the towers on September 11th, is the same fighter he's always been, and he's winning this fight. Please, keep the prayers coming. We feel them, and the mayor feels them. We'll continue to update you as we can.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union.
Slaves to each other, our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor.
While John Adams was writing the Declaration of Independence in July of 1776, his wife Abigail Adams was going through a very personal crisis of her own. At the very moment of the birth of America as an independent nation, Abigail experienced the tragic stillbirth of her fifth child. Her grief was compounded by the loss of her mother just months before during an epidemic that swept across the colonies. This episode, in the life of John and Abigail Adams, reminds us that when the American founders pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, a large portion of the sacrifice was borne by the wives and families of the patriots. We are blessed as a nation to have the letters of John and Abigail Adams as a window into the sustaining relationship that women played in the founding of our country. Let us look more closely at what was going on the home front while John Adams was participating in the Continental Congress in Philadelphia, far from his home in Quincy, Massachusetts. Abigail and John had had 2 children 2 years apart. After being blessed with little Abigail and little John, they had a daughter who died at age 2 years old. But since they were together for this family tragedy, there are no letters relating to it. They went on to have 2 more boys, Charles and Thomas. In 1775, when Abigail's mother dies, John is far from the scene of the deaths of intimate family members, and he takes a somewhat detached and stoic approach to this personal tragedy. It is, for him, drowned in the general calamity. Common, he writes from Philadelphia, for a train of calamities to come together. Fire, sword, pestilence, famine, often keep company and visit the country in a flock. But Abigail, much more immersed in the nursing of the dying, turns not to philosophic consideration, but to the scriptures for consolation. It has pleased the great disposer of all events to add breach to breach. Rare are solitary woes, and they come in a train and tread each other's heel. She pours out her complaint using the language of the Psalms and the prophet Isaiah from the Hebrew Scriptures. How long, O Lord, shall the whole land say, I am sick? O show us wherefore it is that thou art contending with us. She turns to the Gospels to receive comfort from the scene of Jesus weeping over the death of his friend Lazarus. He who deigned to weep over a departed friend will surely forgive a sorrow which at all times desires to be bounded and restrained by a firm belief that a being of infinite wisdom and unbounded goodness will carve out my portion in tender mercy towards me. Yea, though he slay me, I will trust in him, says holy Job. Abigail explicitly says that the trial of her husband's absence had deepened her reliance on God. Oh, how I have longed for your bosom, to pour forth my sorrows there and to find a healing balm. But perhaps that has been denied me, that I might be led to a higher and more permanent consolator, who has bid us call upon him in the day of trouble. John Adams responds in amazement at her strength. I am charmed with that admirable fortitude and that divine spirit of resignation which appears in your letters. Just over a year later, Abigail writes to John with touching immediacy about what she is experiencing as she goes through her miscarriage. She writes that she must lay aside her pen because the labor pains are too intense, only to pick up her pen again when they have passed. But she says with great simplicity that she knows the labor pains are in vain. "I was last night taken with a shaking fit," she says, "and I am very apprehensive that a life was lost, and I have no reason today to think otherwise." John writes to her his famous compliment: "It gives me more pleasure than I can express to learn that you sustain with so much fortitude the shocks and terrors of the times. You are really brave, my dear. You are a heroine. And you have reason to be. For the worst that can happen can do you no harm. A soul as pure, as benevolent, as virtuous and pious as yours has nothing to fear, but everything to hope and expect from the last of human evils." Yet, even these most personal of tragedies did not pass without some philosophical reflection from them both. John suggests that perhaps Abigail's mother, who has just died, was too devoted to the domestic realm to be a fitting model for their children, who should be trained up to value the public and civic virtues above all. It should be your care, therefore, and mine, to elevate the minds of our children and exalt their courage, to accelerate and animate their industry and activity. If we suffer their minds to grovel and creep in infancy, they will grovel all their lives. But their bodies must be hardened, as well as their souls exalted. Without strength and activity and vigor of body, the brightest mental excellencies will be eclipsed and obscured. This is not the only time that John is critical of a life that is too limited in its horizons. Reflecting on the great Roman philosopher Cicero's discussion of the levels and degrees of human sociability, John thinks that too great concern for the personal and the local can pervert the intellect and will. But Abigail adroitly responds by quoting and acknowledging Cicero's dictum: "Our country is, as it were, a secondary god and the first and greatest parent. It is to be preferred to parents, wives, children, friends, and all things, God only excepted. For if our country perishes, it is as impossible to save an individual as it is to preserve one of the fingers of a mortified hand." Nevertheless, she gently reminds him that his absorption in public affairs sometimes leads him to neglect important domestic duties as a father. She reminds him that he is responsible for the moral education of his children. She points out his children's virtues would be doubly enforced could they be indulged with the example of a father constantly before them. She insists that public virtue must be backed up with virtue in private life as well, that civic obligations cannot be separated from religious and moral obligations. "I have been led to think, from a late defection, that he who neglects his duty to his Maker may well be expected to be deficient and insincere in his duty towards the public." Abigail insists that merely civic motives cannot replace the more internal motives of religion and morality. Let revenge or ambition, pride, lust, or profit tempt these men to base and vile action. You may as well hope to bind up a hungry tiger with a cobweb as to hold such debauched patriots in the visionary chains of decency, or to charm them with the intellectual beauty of truth and reason. She clearly got through to John, because years later, looking back at the founding, he echoed her image. "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Avarice, ambition, revenge, or gallantry would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net. Our Constitution was made only for moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." Abigail's insistence that religious and family obligations are fundamental to a thriving republic helped shape America's founding. George Washington would famously confirm this insight in his farewell address. "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism. who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the duties of men and citizens. The founding generation inherited these ideas about the interconnectedness of duties to God, father, and country from the long-standing classical and Christian tradition in which they stood. The ancient statesman Marcus Tullius Cicero, who had stood up for the liberty of the Roman Republic against the tyranny of Caesar, was not just the founders' tutor in the understanding of the Republic and the laws. The American founders had been educated in his moral philosophy by reading his book On Duties, which was the textbook for ethics throughout the Christian ages and into the modern period. John Locke, the English Enlightenment philosopher, said that Cicero's little book on duties was the most important book that a parent could put into the hands of their children. The American founding generation read there of the interconnectedness of the laws of nature that unite all mankind under God, family, and country. Even as the American founders demanded their rights, grounded in the laws of nature and of nature's God, they acknowledged their duties to God, family, and country. They did not think that rights could be abstracted from those duties, which were grounded just as surely in the laws of nature and of nature's God. In the letters of John and Abigail Adams, we're given a glimpse into this founding family, with sorrows, joys, long months apart, and innumerable sacrifices for the cause of freedom. John and Abigail's letters remind us that the bonds of marriage and family gave our founders the strength to serve with honor and bravery. And like Abigail Adams, many of the ladies of the founding played an indispensable role in American independence. They ran the family farms and businesses, made warm clothes for freezing soldiers, prayed for a swift and definitive victory, counseled their husbands, and reminded the young republic of the importance of duty to God, family, and country. And we will forever remember the ladies whose quiet service and tireless toil helped give birth to this new land of liberty.
Mayor Rudy Giuliani is out of the ICU. He'll spend some time recovering before leaving the hospital. The mayor and his family appreciate the outpouring of love and support sent his way. Mayor Giuliani, the man who took down the mafia, saved New York City, and ran toward the towers on September 11th, is the same fighter he's always been, and he's winning this fight. Please, keep the prayers coming. We feel them, and the mayor feels them. We'll continue to update you as we can.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union.
To each other, our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor.
I've been asked to say a few words about the religious faith of America's founders and why it matters. Hi, I'm Mark David Hall, a professor in the Robertson School of Government at Regent University. Let me begin by observing that a lot of nonsense has been written about the faith of America's founders. Scholars and popular authors alike routinely assert that they were Enlightenment deists who desired to strictly separate church and state. Nothing could be further from the truth. On September 24, 1789, the House of Representatives approved what would become the First Amendment, an amendment that includes these important words: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Those who oppose religion in public life often point to this amendment as evidence that the founders wanted to build a wall of separation between church and state. But consider this. The day after the House approved the First Amendment, Elias Boudinot, who later became president of the American Bible Society, proposed that Congress ask President Washington to recommend a day of public thanksgiving and prayer. In response to objections by Adonias Burke and Thomas Tucker that such a practice mimicked European customs or should be done by the states, Connecticut's Roger Sherman justified the practice of Thanksgiving on any signal event not only as laudable in itself, but as warranted by a number of precedents in Holy Writ. For instance, the solemn thanksgivings and rejoicings which took place in the time of Solomon. The House agreed with Boudinot and Sherman, as did the Senate. Congress requested that President Washington issue a Thanksgiving Day proclamation. He didn't have to, but he did. On October 3, 1789, Washington issued a proclamation designating Thursday, November 26, as a national day of prayer and thanksgiving. Whereas it is a duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey His will, to be grateful for His benefits, and to humbly implore His protection and favor, I do recommend the people of these states to the service of the great and glorious being who is a beneficent author of all the good that was, that is, or that will be, that we may then unite in rendering unto Him our sincere and humble thanks, and also that we may then unite in our most humble offerings and prayers and supplications to the great Lord and ruler of nations, and beseech Him to pardon our national and other transgressions, to enable us all, whether in our public or private stations, to perform our several and relative duties properly and punctually, to render our national government a blessing to all people. President Washington encouraged prayer, but he did not attempt to compel it. America's founders saw nothing wrong with civic leaders endorsing religious practices like prayer, but they had also come to a consensus that there must be no compulsion in matters of faith. In the late 18th century, 98% of Americans of European descent were Protestant, 2% were Roman Catholic, and there were about 2,000 Jews in 4 American cities. Although it is often claimed that many of the founders were deists, that label may be applied to only a handful of individuals. Now, Protestants are people of the book, that is, the Bible. So if faith was important to the founders, one would expect them to make significant use of the scriptures in their political writings. And they did. Donald Lutz conducted an impressive study of the pamphlets, articles, and books on political subjects in late 18th century America. The study found that the Bible was cited far more often than any other book, article, or pamphlet at the time. Indeed, the founders referenced the Bible more than all European authors combined, 34% to 22%. Think about that, 34% of all citations are to the Bible alone, only 22% to Enlightenment thinkers such as John Locke, Montesquieu, or Adam Smith. Did the founders' religious convictions make a difference in the creation of America's constitutional order? Absolutely they did. The Declaration of Independence. Its central paragraph relies on a theological claim. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. For almost all of the founders, God is the source of natural rights, and it is a primary duty of government to protect these rights. Many Enlightenment thinkers in the era supported a strong centralized government run by experts. But America's founders would have nothing to do with this because they believed that humans are sinful. In Federalist 51, James Madison observed that if men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. This led them to design a constitutional order characterized by the separation of powers, checks and balances, and federalism. Critically, the founders believed that humans were created in the imago Dei, the image of God. In his 1793 Supreme Court opinion in Chisholm v. Georgia, Justice James Wilson, paraphrasing Psalm 139, observed that man, fearfully and wonderfully made, is a workmanship of his all-perfect Creator. He echoed this conviction in his law lectures, noting that innocent life must always be protected. He wrote with evident approval that, with consistency, beautiful and undeviating, human life from its commencement to its close is protected by the common law.
Many founders were also coming to recognize that slavery fundamentally undermines the idea that all humans are created in God's image, and so they were coming to oppose it. This is why the Confederation Congress passed and the First Federal Congress reauthorized the Northwest Ordinance, a law that prohibits slavery in the territories, which became the states of Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and part of Minnesota. As well, 8 states north of Maryland abolished or put slavery on the path to extinction between 1777 and 1804. Finally, the founders understood the Christian faith to require the robust protection of religious liberty for all. This is illustrated well by George Mason's draft of Article 16 of the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which reads, that as religion, or the duty which we owe to our divine and omnipotent Creator, and the manner of discharging it can be governed only by reason and conviction, not by force or violence, and therefore that all men should enjoy the fullest toleration in the exercise of religion according to the dictates of conscience, unpunished and unrestrained by the magistrate. Note how Mason's provision is grounded in the duty which we owe to our divine and omnipotent Creator. Now, this is not a bad provision, but James Madison, in his first significant public act, objected to the use of the word toleration in the article, believing that it implied that religious liberty was a grant from the state that could be revoked at will. The Virginia Convention agreed, and Article 16, which had a profound influence on subsequent state constitutions and the National Bill of Rights, was amended to remove the language of toleration to make it clear that the free exercise of religion is a right, not a privilege granted by the state. By the end of the Revolutionary era, every state constitution offered significant protection to religious liberty. The federal Constitution of 1787 did not have a religious liberty provision per se, but Article 6 prohibits religious tests for federal office. Now, some objected that this would allow non-Christians to be elected to federal office. Federalists conceded that this was the case, and many undoubtedly thought this outcome unlikely. But fortunately, they insisted on a constitution that did not favor one religious tradition over another. Anti-Federalists thought the Constitution did not sufficiently protect religious liberty, and they insisted that a Bill of Rights be added to it. In the face of popular outcry, the first Congress proposed and the states ratified a constitutional amendment prohibiting Congress from making a law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. This provision clearly bans Congress from creating a national church, and it goes well beyond protecting the freedom of worship. It insists that citizens have the right to the free exercise of religion. Not only did the founders understand that religious liberty must be robustly protected, they recognized that religious convictions of all Americans must be carefully guarded. I already mentioned Article 6's prohibition on religious tests, but let me close by returning to President Washington. In 1790, he wrote a letter to the Hebrew congregation in Newport, Rhode Island. Keep in mind, there were only about 2,000 Jewish citizens in America, and they had little political or economic power. As a matter of principle, not politics, President Washington insisted that all citizens possess alike liberty and conscience and the immunities of citizenship. It is now no more that toleration is spoken of, as if it was by the indulgence of one class of people that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily, the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens, in giving it on all occasions their effectual support. Like James Madison, Washington emphasized that Americans have moved beyond toleration to respecting the inherent natural right of all people to the free exercise of religion. Washington closed this letter with the following paragraph. May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell on this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. May the Father of all mercy scatter light and not darkness in our paths, and make us all in our several vocations useful here, and in his own due time and way everlastingly happy. There are 9 scriptural references in this last paragraph. One of them is to Micah 4:4, which reads, while everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. This was George Washington's favorite Bible verse. He quoted or paraphrased it more than 50 times in his writings. Today, we give thanks for our founders' religious faith and for their wisdom and foresight in protecting the sacred right of conscience in the First Amendment. Now, it is up to every generation to protect these rights, to ensure that every American can sit under his own vine and fig tree and never be afraid. Thank you for joining me.
U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at t2t.org.
"56 patriots gathered in a meeting hall in Philadelphia and signed their names to a document that would change the course of history forever. The Declaration of Independence, and I have it right there. What a beauty. Not only did they sever the political bonds with Great Britain, they announced a new era in human events, proclaiming that all of us are endowed by our Creator with rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In our war for independence and every generation since, thousands of American patriots have enlisted their lives in defense of that cause. From Trenton to Yorktown, from Gettysburg to Chambersburg, from the fields of France to the shores of the Philippines, and on the battlefields all over the world, every generation of Americans has drawn meaning and been inspired by the immortal deeds of the founding generation and the nation they gave us to build and to defend. In 2.5 centuries, that's 250 years, the spirit of 1776 has carried our flag to places and heights that our founding fathers could never have dreamed. Americans forged into the frontier and blazed across the Great Plains. We tamed the Wild West. We pushed the boundaries of scientific discovery. We enlightened the world with electricity and commerce. We defeated tyrants and vanquished dictators. And we planted the American flag on the moon. We owe it all to the patriots and heroes of 1776. This is the story of America. We're excited to retell one of the greatest tales in the history of mankind, working with Hillsdale College and some of our country's brightest leaders and foremost thinkers who have contributed to the Story of America video series, including Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, Dr. Larry Arnn, Eric Metaxas, Brian Kilmeade, and many others. Join us in honoring this incredible history, and together we will give America the greatest birthday celebration our country has ever seen. God bless you, and God bless America.
U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at t2t.org.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal. 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month.
Wow.
Including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news,
Wow.
even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax,
Wow.
channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly,
Wow.
where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY. Act fast. These deals are selling out.
Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're gonna go into the roaster and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
Mayor Rudy Giuliani is out of the ICU. He'll spend some time recovering before leaving the hospital. The mayor and his family appreciate the outpouring of love and support sent his way. Mayor Giuliani, the man who took down the mafia, saved New York City, and ran toward the towers on September 11th, is the same fighter he's always been, and he's winning this fight. Please, keep the prayers coming. We feel them, and the mayor feels them. We'll continue to update you as we can.
It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply our God-given common sense. So let's do it. It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained